All right, you are unmuted.
Okay. Oh. Good afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Benzie County Board of Commissioners study session. Today is November 14th, 2023. I'm told the day before a very important day. And, yeah, we're all still gathered here. We are in the Frank Walter House Board of Commissioner room. Would everyone please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey is excused, Nye,
Here.
Roloffs is excused, Sauer,
Here.
Worsecki is excused.
Wow. We have an agenda before us. Are there any additions?
Janat moves to approve.
Second. Question and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Of minutes to consider from 10:10.
Don't get locked, John.
All
I move to accept minutes as presented. Janat supports.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we'll open our first public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Seeing none, I will close public comment. And we will move to our HR updates. I believe Rose is gonna bring us up to speed on that, and everybody has a report in front of them.
So as you can see, we have hired multiple new employees. We have gotten our bailiffs up basically full.
Our bailiff positions are
Yes.
full. Yes.
It's full, so which is really good. So now we can move
Three
on.
bailiffs.
Yep.
Oh, the three bailiffs.
Bailiffs,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So we're gonna have 24-hour road patrol soon.
That is the
That
next goal.
That is the,
Yes.
up to the sheriff, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we did gain another airport authority person. We just found out about it about a week ago. And we only have one workers' compensation. And only one person on medical leave. Jackie is working on reclassification policies, processes for the non-union employees. She is anticipated done November, early December, and start working on that. There's also a few policies that we are buttoning up and finishing and hoping to. I don't want to say that will be done by the end of the year, but it is a goal that we're going to try and be done for all the policy for employees. And then ongoing upcoming projects, she's going to be visiting visited emergency management. And she is going to be visiting Equalization Net. And then working on reclassification for non-union employees.
So I just want to expand upon that. The workers' comp is a report only. There's not a claim active. It's just report only. And when it comes to the reclassification is for non-union, non-elect, the elected positions are not included as part of that reclassification. I know she's diligently working on the not sheriff's office, the court staff first, and then moving through the process, and first come, first serve, courts were first. So that she's moving through that process based on that. Hopefully we'll have recommendations to the board as to, how to implement those potential changes January, since we don't have a second meeting in December. So probably January, I would expect some of the final reclassifications coming forward for potential adjustments.
Rose, Brooke, the airport authority, is that a paid position?
It's a part-time position that the airport authority pays for.
And is that a new position or is that one that was just needed to be filled?
It's a full position, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Katie, let me just clarify, were we changing the order of our discussion topics?
No, so within the opioid settlement discussion, we have all four proposal folks here. And so staff would like to be the fourth
Staff will be-
of those
Gotcha,
four,
okay.
so.
Okay. So we have discussion regarding building security. Hey, Rebecca Hubers.
Good afternoon, Rebecca Hubers, Office of Emergency Management. I also have the role of building security for most of the part, and I'm glad to find out that we have our 3 other bailiffs who will also help with the physical security of the building. I just wanted to touch on points that I mentioned at the buildings and grounds, that as we move forward with lighting, I hope that we can consider collaborating with maybe some security upgrades, that we have no cameras out in the parking lot at this point. That's something that I will work with Katie on as far as capital for the future. And I'm working on getting bids through our current vendor to maybe add some additional cameras to our system. We just have a couple of little spots where you can't see what's going on. And then 2, as you go into 2024, without elaborating on security deficiencies, I would like for if anybody's on one of those boards that meet later in the evening, I guess I'd like to consider either procedures or time schedule changes or something that would be more practical to having security around the door that opens. Either where they start earlier so that the door is open already when it starts rather than later. And having it opened remotely or not having someone in the building to double check after everybody leaves. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to bring up that might affect 2024. What are they, committees and scheduling of those committees in the future? I think there's only a few that run late.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I just wanted to not surprise you when I start talking about camera up. Because we're still in the analog world and everything's digital now. So there's just better ways. I hope to be efficient.
I think you were in attendance for the joint court meeting here, but if you weren't, I think you were when Judge Thompson had really positive say about the changes that have made in the building and.
Yeah, so in addition to we talked about earlier, FOC and some cyber community or cybersecurity things, the court has some restrictives and we've worked on, locking down some of the doors and making the place as secure as possible for, existing staff and even the public if something should happen, because unfortunately the world is the way it is anymore and we're government. Thank you.
Just one question for you right off. Do we have somebody go through the building at 5 o'clock? Make sure nobody's hiding
Nobody's
anywhere?
assigned to that
I'm
position.
just curious.
Nobody's assigned to that position.
Mm-mm.
That probably might be something that we will talk about now that we have full-time bailiffs and what their job duties will be on and off hours besides court bailiffing. But it's not really in any job description. I think the magistrate does a walkthrough. I check cameras, but if I have to leave early or something, it doesn't get done.
Okay.
Not every time when you have an evening meeting, do I see that the gate gets pulled or anything like that. So it's just little things that make vulnerabilities that I don't.
I'm one of the group that has that 4:30 meeting type.
Yeah, and
There's-
before the door closes, the hard part is when we have to open it after the door has already closed. That just makes it a little bit more tricky. If it's open while we're already in business and most of the public for a public meeting is able to get through during those public times, then it's not an issue.
So since Gary brought it up, a lot of, in my experience, a place that people might go to wait till after hours would be the restrooms. Do they get much access to the building if they are hiding in a restroom? Because we lock down a lot of the building.
Most of the rooms are locked for the most part, so no, just the free reign of the public spaces for the most part, unless someone were to do damage in those public spaces. Alarms can go off, but there are no locked doors in certain aspects. Like you could go downstairs and nothing would happen, but you come back upstairs, you would set an alarm off, but the door doesn't stop from coming back upstairs. Fire. emergency type thing, we can't block it. So things like that. Again, not to expose a bunch of vulnerabilities. I think we could do better if we just looked at a little.
And it's been a goal of ours to try to bring in the night meetings into the workday. If possible, Parks and Recreation is one that we talked about for a little while. It does make things a bit easier. But it also would allow us to assign staff to those committees specifically. So that they're really managing, some of that security as a staff person. I hate putting that responsibility on volunteers. We all do. And we don't want the doors unlocked for unforeseeable amounts of time. And so it would be nice to try to get them into the workday.
Have you been given a reason why that's not an option?
The people who are currently sitting on a lot of those committees have full-time jobs. And so they're, they don't want to have to take time off work to be a volunteer on those committees. In other communities, it's already just during the workday, and that's, part of the appointment process, and everybody knows that. Here in Benzie, for some of those committees, they've always been outside of the workday. And so people go into it with that mindset of, well, I'm not going to have to take time off work. And so, it's a transition approach.
Very good. That moves us to our discussion regarding potential county millage, for in-district tuition to Benzie residents at NMC. And I believe we have a couple of representatives from NMC with us today. If you approach the podium and share with us who you are.
Thanks for having us. Todd Neibauer, I'm the Vice President for Student Services and Technologies at the college. We also have Leonard Weaver. He's one of our board of trustees. And Jack Harnish has joined us too from Benzie Advocates, because they've been involved in this process that we've kind of kicked off a little bit in terms of trying to gather some information and get back folks around Benzie County. I had some things that were included in a packet there, and I know that a couple of you had an opportunity to talk to our president previously about this effort, but I think probably the genesis really was around I started serving several years ago on the Best Benzie board, whose goal is to help residents get post-secondary training and education, whether it be occupational, and NMC of course offers lots of occupational programs, but also for those who are seeking say a bachelor's degree or more and want to do transfer, that's another part of our mission. And so I joined in with them with a number of folks. Katie is one of the members of that board, the leadership board anyway, and representatives from the public schools as well. And the goal is really just to, how can we help Benzie residents trying to realize some opportunities that are going to include finding basically a pathway to the job that they want that's going to help them earn a living. So that's kind of that focus there. And I think about this idea of annexation, and it's been a rarely used part of the Community College Act. Just in the last 2 years, there are two schools who have done it, but before that, it was like 25 years since anybody even had a vote. And I think one of the seminal event that kind of brought this to the forefront was when the state launched the Reconnect program to allow folks who are 25 and over who don't have a college degree to have their tuition and fees paid for at the in-district rate. So what was problematic, I think, about that for a lot of rural counties is that it would not pay any money towards anything that was considered the out-of-district portion of tuition. And that's pretty much how community colleges have set up over time. We have a millage, that property tax that helps support the operation there in Grand Traverse County. But then everybody else that's in Michigan would be considered out of district. So the fact that it kind of set that aside and said, no, this money can't cover that, meant that even if somebody was getting a full Pell Grant, which is, assistance from the government because they qualified on a needs basis, that money could go in and cover part of their bill, but then that would always go to that in-district portion first. And so they could be left with, oh, I got $12 from Reconnect because Pell paid this much and I had this much of my bill left over. That's when people started saying, well, wait a second, what about all these rural counties that don't have a community college district? And is that something that we should look at? And so they asked us a lot of questions and tried to do the best we could to answer all those. And I think at this point, though, it's gotten to where the advocates and Best Benzie approached the college and said, hey, we really are interested in taking a look at this. What would it mean for Benzie? And I would say that this is really we're in the information gathering phase of that. We want to hear from folks in Benzie, and we have lots of listening sessions that have been set up to kind of listen to what is it that you would want from this, and also give some explanation about how it works. And we don't want to come in and say, hey, this is what you need. We want to know from your own perspective what that might be and how this might go forward, if it's something that needs to go forward. So I guess that's kind of the the genesis of it. If you look from the demographic perspective, I think there's probably about 6,500 or so residents in Benzie who fit that label of have a high school diploma but don't have a secondary credential or of any kind. And granted, a good number of those folks are probably not looking to go to college at this point because they may be retired or approaching retirement, but that still leaves quite a few people who are. And so if we can provide part of the solution to that, of course, we would be very interested in doing that. So I guess that's kind of the big overview of it. I don't want to bury you with just information about the college. What I'd rather, I guess, hear is what kind of questions you have around this process and what concerns you have for the residents that you represent.
So Todd, I'm going to leave it up to the rest of the board. I've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with Nick and others on it. So don't take my silence as anything other than deferring to them.
I have also met with the university president and I attended your first informational forum at the Mills Community House. So I think my question would be is you try and ascertain if the community would support this. What do you have planned in the future? The first gathering expectedly was a lot of people who were in support. How are you going to reach those folks where you aren't necessarily sure of where they stand on this?
Sure. So Jack has put together one of the items in your packet, so I'll kind of leave that.
Yeah, good question, Rhonda. Thank you. We're really intent on trying to get the word out to as many residents as possible, to really hear what people have to say and, well, to share the information first and then to get people's reaction. So at this point, we've scheduled 4 listening sessions, second week in December, scattered around the county. We'll probably have a few more in January after we get past the holidays. And we've already started. There's an article that's been sent into the Record Patriot as soon as it gets published. And we're trying to find every way we can to get the word out, to invite people through social media, through the various civic clubs, the churches, wherever we can get the word out, because we really do want to try to get as many people involved in the conversation as possible. And we really feel like that's our role, that the role of advocates at this point is simply to bring the conversation forward and to give people the opportunity to hear what this could mean for the county and to give their reaction. I'll say in the early conversations with Nick and Todd and his trustees and staff, we were quite intent on saying the question is not just about tuition for our students, and that's a big deal. But it's not just about affordability, it's also about accessibility. And for many people who might be interested in taking coursework at NMC, either toward a college degree or a certificate, or simply to improve their skills, getting there is as big a problem as paying for it. And so we really push to say this would need to include services in Benzie County. And I think, Todd could speak to that, but both Nick and Todd have been really clear about their commitment to make services available in the county in a variety of ways that would make educational opportunities more accessible as well as more affordable. Lower tuition rate, Michigan Reconnect, those various financial services that are not available to our students right now. So that's what motivated our conversation. As some of you remember, 8 years ago when Advocates for Benzie County was formed, one of their early priorities was education. And we haven't really done much in that area until more recently. But that's where this conversation got started, and to see if NMC would be able to provide some kind of direct services in Benzie County, address the need for people who have not had any kind of training beyond high school.
And so, if I may, Chair, Jack, so through your group, Advocates for Benzie County, do you have information or have you gathered data that people that are in need of this or desire this?
Yeah, well, both anecdotal,
Okay,
individuals who have either looked at or tried and then discovered they couldn't afford or they couldn't get the
Okay.
NMC. But also just the data. I mean, if Maggie was here, Maggie Bacon has done a lot more work on the data, like Todd alluded to. But it tells us there are about 6,500 adults in Benzie County
correct.
who have never had any education past high school. So I don't have a lot of hard data right now.
We don't know that. And then I guess to both of you, you and Todd and your board members and whoever else is here, is there a certain number that you're looking at that would make it a feasible benefit for NZ residents?
Right, so just to, I don't know what everybody's knowledge level on those, you all certainly understand millages, and so I think the point
Mhm.
perhaps you're getting at is the millage rate is for right now in Grand Traverse County is 2.05-ish mils. And that is by the Community College Act, we don't have an option of
Okay.
doing a different one. So that's the millage rate that would be applied to Benzie County residents. And that would produce about $3 million and right now you have about 170 Benzie residents who are currently enrolled at the college. And the portion of their tuition that is out of district is about 500,000. And so the
Okay.
value proposition, I think that has to make sense to the residents is what's going on with the difference. And so, for us, we've had quite a few more residents from Benzie who have been students in the past. If you were to go back about 8 years, we had over 300. And so I think there's probably quite a few who could be coming that economic circumstances are at a situation right now where they don't feel like they have to. Wages have gone up and those things will change over time. But I think the part that Jack alluded to, though, is this connection actually within the county that, the NMC would become the college for Benzie County. And the placement of a facility here, some of the biggest challenges that students face when they are trying to go back to school, 2/3 of our students are older and they're part-time because they're working. They're trying to
Sure.
maintain their home and their family and keep their job and everything. And transportation becomes a really big impediment for some of them, especially, of course, if they're coming from a long ways away. And by providing support services and a facility that has some of the amenities that maybe they don't have available to them at home, we can provide a situation where they can do something now that wasn't possible before, because we have, so we're not talking just about them coming and taking classes. We do a lot of partnerships with, say, Michigan Works, do career planning. I don't think you can divorce career planning from educational planning. The two are hand in hand. People don't come to us usually just because I just want to have a degree. No, they come to us because they hope to have a job. And that's really the business that we're in. So I think part of it is hearing what folks would really want if that were the case, but we do have a commitment that if this were to pass, that, hey, we have a responsibility to be present in this county. That's physical, certainly, but also ongoing. And, we would want to put together a long-range plan to show that the investment that those residents are making actually is coming back to them. Whether they come through it, take academic classes, or they have training set up with our training services for, businesses. And that's another part of it too, is that trying to keep qualified people is not always easy for businesses these days. And one of the advantages to offer in conjunction with a program like Reconnect is that, they may end up not having to pay anything for a tuition assistance program for their folks to come back and upskill. So, we're committed to listening to what folks would find value in, because we know that there's this gap between what is paid strictly in district tuition and what benefits would provide for with the tax revenues that came in. So we have a much bigger footprint than just the academics. I mentioned there's the occupational training and whatnot, but that also brings connections for the arts, for non-credit type offerings where we have for
Enrichment. or
enrichment.
whatever.
Yep, sure,
Mhm.
surely. And so, that's kind of why we're listening to what folks have to say about that. And we know that that's probably that biggest hurdle, is trying to share a value proposition that shows that. But it's unfortunate, I think, sometimes in the way that community colleges have developed over time in Michigan. In talking to, say, the Department of Labor Economic Opportunity, they're saying, hey, the 80% of Michigan's residents live in a community college district, and that's true statewide. But up here, half of our students, actually more than half of our students, don't. In Southeast Michigan, it's hard to throw a rock without hitting a community college, and that's just not the case up here. West Shore's a little ways away. We're a little ways away. And so we're looking to see what we can do to offer help for folks to realize whatever their dream is for some their economic proposition in life. So
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to get an answer on, and that really helps because I did not go to the study sessions or the different things that you attended, both of you, or speaking with them. But I was trying to find out what is the end number of students or economic benefit or whatever it is, however you want to measure, to make what do we have to meet to get you guys to come?
Oh, well, I think we would be here if they were passive. We definitely would be here and be looking to establish a physical presence, and then we would look to build from there. And it would, frankly, in the first several years, we would probably be starting to execute a plan that would be in excess of what the tax revenues were initially, because
Sure.
It wouldn't be a situation where we would say, hey, in 10 years after we've gathered enough money, we'll go in. No, that's not really the way we'd want to do it. I think people need to expect a benefit at the time, close to possible, as after they voted for something like this. So that is our plan. That would include staffing that would be permanently located there. There are, in terms of coordination of all the different types of services we have, helping to do outreach. We have folks who visit the high schools now, but I think there's room for a lot greater collaboration and work to assist with them. I feel bad. I lived in public education sphere for the first 20 years of my career, and to think that the counselor at a high school is able to cover all the things that they're expected to do is not realistic. And funding's not terrible for public schools right now, but they went through some really lean times that a lot of districts were down to one counselor for an entire district. And so that's our work dovetails quite a bit. Frankly, we had all the counselors from the ISD, Northwest Ed, and up in September to the campus. And We work very closely with them around career planning, but also college planning and those types of things. And I think there's more that can be done there as well. So that's the kind of thing where I say we're totally open to this. We would commit resources for facilities, resources for staffing, and resources to help students too. I mean, as I drove past the Benzie bus location there on 31, and I thought about that, that could be part of a solution. I don't know. That's part of what we're definitely worth talking about. Not everybody has their car working every day. There's all kinds of things that we could be doing. The goal though is to have those who can take advantage of an education, be able to do it, and are there to help address any of the hurdles and try to take them out of their way if possibly can. So yes, we definitely would be looking to be a mainstay, I think, of the Benzie community.
And there would be a core of classes online too?
Yeah, so right now about a quarter of our classes are offered online.
Okay.
A lot of the dual enrollment for students in Benzie County that they take through us are online classes, because frankly, if you're the principal, you're not super excited about putting a bunch of kids on the road in the winter to drive to the campus. And so that is a big part of our programming. There are some classes that it would probably make sense to be able to offer even in face-to-face here. We've had a big wonder from the recent graduates about face-to-face, and I think that's probably understandable considering what they had to do during the pandemic, that they really have a preference for that. But working folks, what we find is over 90% of them are expecting to take online classes, not necessarily because that's their favorite way to take a class, because that's the only way they can take a class.
It's available.
Right. But a facility here would allow us to provide tutoring services, technology resources, all those types of things that a student's going to need and may or may not be able to provide for themselves all the time.
Another question, has this effort been made in any other neighboring counties ever?
Ever? Yes. So there was a bond, not bond, excuse me. There was a vote back in 96. So it's been 28 years. And that was in Leelanau, Benzie, Kalkaska, and Antrim. And at that time it went down in all of those counties. So we have not approached that since then. And this was actually a special circumstance where when the advocates in Best Benzie came forward and said, "Hey, would you consider this?" Well, I absolutely would consider it. But it's on your behalf, so.
Do you have any other final thoughts for us?
Anything you can do to help us announce the listening sessions would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that was in the packet. I think Jack got that in there at the last, but yeah, so we're certainly open. Anybody that you may run into that has questions, they should feel free to contact myself or Jack or Maggie or anybody. That's Josh Stoltz would be another great person to grab. Yeah, we're always willing to come and talk. So we've got a schedule there, and Nick will probably be doing most of those along with some of the Benzie folks, but we're happy to go talk to anybody anywhere about it.
Our shower has.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, when your chart here, this cost benefit, missing one line. I'd like to see the out of district tuition in the same line. The 6,500 residents, we only have 1,705, something like that to begin with. Most of them are probably my age, and I'm not come back to school, even though I did at one time. But I want a clearer perspective. You're talking $2 to $3 million for the possibility of maybe $500,000 worth of folks. I mean, I think we can figure out a better way to pay for that. This is a huge cost to taxpayers. May not appear if you individually look at it, but we start generating that kind of money, I'm concerned. Anyway,
Absolutely understand that.
I just wanted you to have my perspective.
No, I
Thank you.
appreciate that. And
Yeah.
that's not surprising. I think it's definitely incumbent upon the college to be able to help understand if there's a value proposition that folks are interested in taking advantage of. There's going to be folks where the answer is no. I get that. So,
Thank you, though.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Howard? Hey, all the trustees. What kind, what do we? Don't know. We don't want to. We're gonna build this. Ford Woods, Ford.
Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate you coming in today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
So that moves us on to our next subject, which is our discussion regarding opioid settlement fund proposals. For people hearing about this for the first time who may be watching the recording or people listening in, there was a settlement made with pharmaceutical company over the opioid epidemic, and Benzie County was a recipient of funds and will be over time. I believe the projection is, Katie, help me,
18 years.
18 years. So currently, I believe there's about $100,000 in the coffers.
101.
101. Okay. And because we are not experts up here in this field, we issued an RFP for the best ways to disperse this money to help the most people and have the most impact. The monies come with restrictions. They can only be used in certain ways. So those rules have to be adhered to. The RFP was sent out. We had 4 responses, and today those 4 people who submitted are all present in the room and are going to talk to us. So I think that brings us up to speed, and I will start with the first one in the packet after we pass the staff. And Chip Johnston from Central Wellness, if you would let us know what you're thinking.
So I did pass out to everybody a scoring sheet if you want to fill that out as the folks are discussing, unless you've already filled it out while at home. But this will just kind of help you as a guide, and it might help you ask questions too of Chip and the others, as we go through this.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks. I don't know if you all know this, but when the lawsuit was going on, I worked with the state of Michigan's attorneys, the Mark Bernstein, and then the federal attorneys out of New York on behalf of the state and our 2 counties to establish a penalty, if you will, or a payment based on the needs and what we were seeing in our communities. And so I'm very pleased that we're actually here today as a result of all of that work. And so what you have before you from us, is basically what we're asking for is frankly to be last when you're done hearing from everyone else in the room. We have existing programs that, because of folks moving off of opioids and onto fentanyl and meth, we're looking for sustainability of the program long term. One of the things that when we went into doing this, particularly the Medicaid assisted treatment, which was in 2014 when we had a rash of deaths, we, as I said to my board at the time, we don't know what we're doing, but no one else will do it because it's not economically viable to set up a MAT clinic in our communities. So we went into it knowing that we would have to beg, borrow, steal, do grants, use our own general funds and local funds to make it happen because people were dying. So the MAT portion of our proposal that you see supports that effort. Currently, it really depends on who comes in the door, what kind of money they have before them, and is roughly breaks even around 60 to 75 individuals, depending on who's coming in. And currently we're down to about 40 to 50. Folks, again, are moving off of opioids because it's very expensive to get a hold of. So that program, we are working in collaboration with Catholic. We coordinate everything comes through us. We then work with them for folks that are mild to moderate. Catholic handles for the counseling and ongoing supports. We then work with individuals who have dual diagnoses, mental illness and substance abuse issues. And so the Medicaid assisted treatment program part is roughly running, as you see, at about $23,000 in the hole from last year. And so what we're looking for is on that piece is to help us with, after you're done with your other priorities, to help us offset our use of internal costs to that program. We're committed to it regardless. So that's what we're looking for on that. The same with the opioid health home program. That is a more involved. That involves nurses, et cetera, to work intensely with individuals to make sure they get to see their physicians, because they those folks in that category have health issues. And so we're working with primary care, Crystal Lake Clinic, Paul Oliver Munson Systems, and their individuals to work with our physicians who are prescribing MAT as well as doing treatment through either us or Catholic. We're coordinating that care. That's what the opioid health home is about. And we are one of the only CMHs in the state of Michigan that are receiving that as well as providing the care. There's a CMH Oakland County, they receive it, but they work with providers. They contract that out. So you will note, and it has been a question to me, why Benzie has a disproportionate amount compared to Manistee County, which we also operate in. And that is simply because a couple things. Folks in Benzie County have options in Traverse City to go to, so they don't come to us. So they're more mobile. Lake Ann area, for example, they tend to go to Traverse City and receive treatment and coordination from there. So that was a very good question. Thank you, Commissioner John. And also, so therefore we, as part of our, because we have the clinic really going in Manistee, someone comes in the door, they have to spend their initial sessions in Manistee unless it happens to overlap with a Benzie clinic day. And there's 2 days here and 10 days, 2 days a month, 10 days in Manistee. So if it happens to overlap, they'll come here. Once they get through that initial piece, then they're here in Benzie County. We also collaborate with ATS, which has a mobile clinic now working. Our issue is, it always is, we will do it if no one else will. And we will try to give it to somebody else if they're willing to do it. Up until recently, it wasn't cool to be in this business. So that's why we're here, and that's what we're looking for. So the numbers you have before you are frankly what our shortfalls are in both of those two categories, and any assistance you can provide after you're done with other community priorities of yours, we would greatly appreciate any love you can send our way.
So Chip, I appreciate you being here today. I guess the thing I want to stress, and Chip and I had a conversation when he first sent this memo out. I didn't even realize it was going to be on this agenda at the time, but is that the residents of Benzie County are actually getting more services than what this report reflects.
Yes.
So the shortfall, if you wanted to apply the cost of serving that individual, the shortfall in Benzie County is understated also.
Yes, very much so. Yes. So there is when I was working with the state, you know, the Sam Bernstein attorneys, those guys, Mark Bernstein, you may have seen their commercial.
At the bus stop.
Yes, very, very nice fellow, by the way.
He was here.
Yes, it was all at the same time. And you know, at that time, we were able to glean numbers, to your point, from other providers as well as the coroner, and a variety of source points, which was really helpful in ascertaining the penalty, if you will, to the drug companies, pharmaceutical companies. So that's my pitch. Any questions?
Questions?
Well, Chip does, so I,
We appreciate what you do.
yeah, I really do. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate your time and consideration. So thank you very much.
Campbell?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here. I am a fish out of water, sitting here in front of you, standing here in front of you, but very good to hear what Chip just had to share. I'm a woman in long-term recovery and am also a family member of those who've passed on from long-term use and opioid overdose. And I'm a certified peer recovery coach through the state and also nationally, and have been working in the field for the last few years. Prior to that, just working on my own recovery and also a spirituality and health life coach. And so this is really intricately woven into who I am. And up until just a few months ago, because of a health challenge I was having, I was the program director at Community Recovery Alliance in Petoskey. And prior to that, had been working at Munson as a peer navigator and peer coach. And one of the things that was challenging for me, I mean, it was all such a wealth of information, and what you were sharing about many people from our county going elsewhere. I would wind up seeing people at meetings, or be giving a talk somewhere at one of the treatment centers outside of our county, and I'd see people from our community there, and got to work with several people, residents from our community at Munson, both places. So here I was leaving my home in Benzie County to go out to Grand Traverse County, or out to Emmett County, or out to Gaylord, or wherever I was being called to do service, and seeing our people, and knowing that I was leaving every day to go support, to educate the community about how to think differently about substance use disorder, about alcoholism and drug abuse. Those are ways that we used to talk about it. And they're facts, things that happen: substance use disorder, co-occurring issues, mental health, trauma that are underlying the issue. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about family members and people I love, and community members. I've learned a lot about why people don't get help and why the help doesn't stick. I've learned a lot about that on a mental and emotional level, as well as through coding and rules and regulations and grants, and a lack of funding and a lack of understanding from the people who love us in our community and family members. I've learned an immense amount. So at the end of September, when I knew I was going to have to leave my position in Petoskey due to this health challenge, I got excited. My landlord was like, "Hey, why don't you start something like this here in Benzie County?" And I'm like, me? I do a lot of cool stuff, and I'm capable of a lot of cool stuff, but I'm no executive director. I am very good, however, at connecting to the hearts and minds of other human beings and treating them like human beings, and educating people who have an open mind. So I've been an advocate, and I've been an educator, and I've been a peer walking alongside other people and family members who've struggled like I've struggled, to have to set down hard boundaries and shut doors to people we care about and watch them die. And I would like very much to see Northern Michigan, to see our world, but to see this community that I live in a healthier place. And in order to do that, we have to call out the pink elephants that are in the room. And that starts within us, really. So part of my proposal, I threw out there something that at the last minute, I saw that this was a thing, that y'all were at the last minute taking proposals, that you had extended this. And I threw out there all of my passions in this really messy format. And ultimately, what I would love to see happen here is not necessarily what I sent you, but some version of a community recovery organization, a community recovery center, where education and advocacy can happen within our community outside of those rooms, but within, different meetings like this one. Where programming, for example, I sat on the board for the state, the Michigan Public Health Institute. I may have just said that wrong, with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and started the very beginnings of a recovery-friendly workplace program, which is still being initially rolled out. So I just was on those boards. I sat in a lot of meetings looking at how we can advocate and educate the community, and how we can think differently and behave differently to heal this thing that is called addiction or alcoholism in our communities, to allow space for people to feel safe enough to go talk to the right people, which might not be you, especially if you're a family member or a loved one, to feel safe enough to get the help that they need. And sometimes it has to be through these harm reduction pathways of medical assisted treatment before somebody fully is able to put down everything and come to terms with what the pain has been inside of them and be able to take responsibility and come to life and engage with it. And that's what a recovery community organization is about, is providing a space for people who are struggling or the loved ones of people who are struggling to be able to come and find people who have had lived experience and have connections to all kinds of resources. Munson, NEMSAS out in Gaylord, Nemoric out in Gaylord, I don't know, the Faces and Voices of Recovery, which is would be a big backer of something like this. Models that have already been set in place. There are recovery community organizations all over the state, and our closest one is in Traverse City. It just recently became one, and then it's like 2 hours away, 4 hours away. We don't have one close to here really. And while Traverse City has some wonderful, wonderful resources, we just heard about how sometimes transportation and things like that can be a big challenge. And when people are steeped in the midst of needing help, transportation is almost always an issue, especially once their loved ones have had to set firm boundaries. They've lost everything. They no longer can function, and they need to be able to rebuild holistically from the bottom. And so my proposal, while I said I have a passion for plants and nature, and I've studied Wellbriety, I went out west, and I also am quarter Anishinaabe, and so those earth-based practices have been really important for me to get out and find a different experience of life as a woman who has struggled with drugs and alcohol in the past, to find comfort, to be comfortable in my own skin. And I've shared that with other people in recovery and watched them have a different point of reference for themselves and begin to open up and find trust. But that's not the only way to do it. So my proposal was about bringing in a nature-based support for people in the recovery community, but that's not it. That's not all. And that wasn't the only thing in my mind. And after I sent it to you folks, I thought, my gosh, I should have just said a really general recovery community organization or recovery community center. And I hope that you've looked into what that means and what those are. They're two different designations and very closely aligned. And one entity can be both of them. But I think that Benzie County could turn from being a place where, we have a great need here, and we could turn into being a really beautiful, healthy, holistically healthy place, and like a poster child for turning something around that I know that everyone in this room has tasted and been a part of. There's nobody who hasn't been impacted by this issue. I know this because I've watched it for over a decade, really closely. And I've talked to a lot of people. And so I know that you've all been impacted by it in one way or another. And I would love for us all to be a part of the solution. So while my proposal was pretty specific in what I laid out, my ultimate proposal that I bring to you today, and I'm not here to say that I need to be the one to do this, but I would be willing to step up and begin and work with other people. There's no way to not work with other people. I mentioned in there an alliance, and I know a lot of peer recovery coaches all over the state and in this county. I have connections, intimate connections. I actually am hired. I work for NEMSAS in Gaylord as a trainer for other coaches and as a volunteer coach. I have connections with lots of different organizations, including the state. I taught for the state last year at the peer conference, doing meditation and mindfulness supports for peers. So I have, for me, it's about all of us together and the resources and bringing resources and education and advocacy and having a safe space for all of that to be a spearhead to come forward from. And I have like probably just exhausted all of your ears and so I thank you for your listening and whatever questions you might have for me at this point. I'm available to answer.
Sounds like you have extensive experience in dealing with this subject. So let's say that this body decided at some point to write a check and say, okay, continue your work. Do with it what's next? What happens next?
Yes, that's a great question. Well, I want to hear who else is in the room and I want to see who else is here doing what and what isn't being done. But I would think to myself, I would want to find a space where people can get together and have non-traditional meetings, meaning a peer coach meets people where they're at. And not everybody's going to go to an NA or an AA meeting. In fact, there are about 26 million people in the United States who identify as being in recovery, and about 1.8 of them have claimed that they're a part of a 12-step group. That's a big discrepancy. What are those other people doing? And so I've been, blessed. And I used to be a major 12-stepper, like there's only just one way. This is what we're doing. And found out, no, that's not all I did. I had to go do yoga, lots of yoga and meditation to help me find health and well-being. I needed to be out in nature. And then I found a lot of my very dear friends were doing Celebrate Recovery, which I understand we do have here, and that's a Christian-based recovery. So I'd want a space where people could come and find support services, not at our space, but where they could get referred out, which is what peer coaches do. What is your plan? Let's coach you into a good recovery plan. Maybe you're not ready to totally quit yet. So a person would come to this space and have access to someone who could walk them through those things and then refer out, and also a space where meetings and workshops and, just spending time together and having activities, or going out into our beautiful area and say, hey, maybe you've never been on the water sober and clean before. Let's go sit out there together and have that experience, which I've done with people. And it may sound silly to some of you, but it is absolutely remarkable and life-changing for people. So it'd be a hub, a space, and that would require, very little. You could do this for very little, but to do it really well, ultimately, invariably, eventually, it would turn into a nonprofit that would be funded by grants through MDHHS and NMORC or whomever we could get that grant funding through. SAMHSA offers a lot of grants for things like this, as well as fundraising from donors in our community. That's just one model. This is long-term. And then from short-term, I could use my cell phone and just talk to people and meet with people. It doesn't take that much to get something like this started. So there are different versions of it. But I'd love to see a space where it's non-denominational, if you will, where people can come in and get a cup of coffee and get some direction and some support and feel safe and like they're heading, they're getting some traction for what resonates for them. I talk a lot. I'm sorry. I hope that answered your question.
So because this is funding that came to the county and we would be issuing this to help most people, would you be willing, because this in my mind is kind of a pilot concept, this hasn't been done the way that you're talking about in our current county. Would that be correct?
As far as I know, we have never had a recovery community organization in Benzie County.
Okay.
That's right.
So would you be open to being accountable in the sense that you would come back 6 months from the time that you were funded to let us know how it's working? And
Oh my
give us
gosh.
updates and let us know the impact that you're having. I want to make sure that whatever we do with this money, we're able to say, this is what we took a chance on and here's how it worked.
Yeah. So I helped to start, you may see a trend here. I've helped to start a lot of things, not necessarily am I still there, but so I've been at the starting end of several projects and had to do a lot of documentation and reporting on those things. And they're really important. because that's how you keep getting funding. And that's how you show that there's been an impact. And so going to different particular places within the community and asking for those statistics from CHIP, from Munson, from wherever, where are you getting people from Benzie County and what are you seeing? As well as the emergency departments and even, the people themselves, and tracking that information is really important. And actually Faces and Voices of Recovery has a whole, they call it a recovery data platform, where it's very simple to put this stuff in and track what is going on and what those statistics are. I would absolutely be willing to do that. I think it's really important.
I do have a question. You said you've been at a beginning of many of the programs, so you're a catalyst
Mhm.
for that. Have you gone back to see the longevity, the fruit of your labors? Are there ones that are still successful and progressing and helping?
Yeah, so the state started something called a Peer Navigator program that is still rolling out, and the person who took over for me for that is someone that I'm connected to and talk to frequently about how that's going. And it's specifically set up to support pregnant women and postpartum women who have substance use disorder. So I would say that has been had some beautiful. It's moving forward. It's brand new, but there's definitely been a great impact. The social workers at the hospitals, the nurse practitioners, and then the peer coach who's navigating all of that have all given beautiful results. Community Recovery Alliance in Petoskey that I helped to get seated, they've branched out in many beautiful ways and are getting involved in the justice system, which is another aspect here of supporting people in reform and rehabilitation. It's beautiful to watch all of the different ways that they're engaging with the community and seeing those numbers and need for revisiting, the relapse or return to use, that those numbers are going down and that people are finding themselves less inclined to get in trouble to get back into jail or prison and finding themselves living in, hope and encourage and taking chances to, follow through on what their therapists and their peer coaches and their sponsors are saying to them to be able to continue a better life, and therefore continue to bring about health and holistic health in our communities. So yes, I would say that there's some beautiful stuff that's continuing to evolve.
Any question? Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time and attention,
Thank you.
everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Move on to the health department.
Hey everyone, I'm Debbie Aldridge. I'm a nurse with the Benzie Mental Health Department and an assistant director there. And the proposal that we submitted was related to our Community Connections program. So I think a lot of you probably heard about this. I know at least Rhonda and Gary have from being on the board. But really how we're different is we have community health workers that do a lot of work. So some of the things that get in the way of folks that are trying to be in recovery is all the other things in life. So things like overdue utility bills and housing and transportation and that kind of stuff. And so with our program, we have screening that happens at a lot of physician offices, and we get referrals from them and from other community agencies for folks who need help with some of those resources. With our program, our community health workers go to the clients. So we do a lot of home visits and we find out what their needs are and then help them with local resources to, walk alongside them, kind of a relationship-based program to help with those needs. So we've been doing that for about 7 years now. I think this brings another added level to it. And so the program that we do, it's certified by the Pathway Community Hub Institute. So it's an evidence-based program that shows that the money that you put into this and what you do has outcomes that make a difference and save a lot of money in the long run. They've updated their program. So starting in this next year, they've added a lot of learning modules and then substance use disorder pathway also for our community health workers to use. And so part of what I think we could do with this is the substance use disorder learning module is really specific. And we would offer that to anybody that we enrolled in services. So last year we served 90 folks that were in Benzie County, not that they had substance use disorder at all, but part of this would be doing these check-ins and this learning with these folks. So you know someone who has a problem with substance abuse. And then one of the other check-ins is, I know someone who's if I know someone who's suffering from substance abuse, I know how to access treatment for him or her. So if we're doing this with all the family members and all the community members, like was said earlier, everybody's been impacted by this and somehow, and do they know what to do and how to help them? So it's a couple of different bases. One is providing education for everybody that we touch, offering this education, talking to them about it. And then the other part is the folks that are seeking treatment for substance use disorder, being able to be with them. We work closely with Central Wellness, with ATS. We get referrals. We've worked with Radasi. We have nurses that do home visits with pregnant women. And so we partner community health workers with them. They can do a visit a month with the nurses and social workers there. This is somebody who can provide additional support and really help with the other needs that are there. Making sure they're getting to their appointments, making sure they know where to go for their appointments. Some of these folks, they just can't prioritize it, or they can't even make that first phone call, or they don't know where to go for that first phone call. Or it's helping a family member help coach somebody that they know how to get treatment. And so that's what we're offering and how I think it would be really beneficial to the community.
And with the strict guidelines, Katie, is that allowable? With the use of the funds?
Yeah, it would fall into one of those categories.
Maybe just a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being here. Good
Mhm.
job on your submission, by the way.
It was a group effort.
So I gather that this is a startup initiative, is that right?
So it's a little bit of both. The program's been in existence, like I said, for about 7 years. We've had community health workers doing this work. This is extension of that. So bringing a new piece to it, like we wouldn't, the learning modules, we have lots of different ones that we offer to people. A lot of them are on chronic disease or on, this or that, offering the substance use disorder one to everybody that we serve specifically. That's a new piece. And so that is the new part. And then also the substance use disorder pathway. So what we have as part of the Hub Institute is we identify what folks' needs are, and then a lot of those have a pathway. So for instance, a housing pathway, we would open if they don't have secure housing, they're worried about where they're going to be in the next 30 days. Sometimes those pathways are open for a long time because we don't close that pathway until they've been housed in safe, affordable housing for 30 days. And so each of the different pathways have different outcomes that close them. For the substance use disorder, it might be, the closing for that is that they've kept all of their appointments they need to keep for 30 days. So it's really helping hold them accountable and helping make sure they get what they need and then on to the next month. So it's 1 month at a time. There's another pathway that's behavioral health. With that pathway, they have to have kept 3 appointments with a behavioral health therapist before we close that pathway is successful, because evidence shows that's what it takes for folks to be engaged in their treatment. There's a health insurance pathway. They just need to get health insurance, and then that's closed successfully. So each of these pathways have different criteria that we follow to be able to close them as successful or not successful. And if it's not successful, why is it not? Is it because we couldn't close childcare because there's not childcare in the area? Or is it because they couldn't afford it, or they didn't have the right hours? So each of these that we close unsuccessfully, we're tracking why. And we report all of that on our website. If you go to the Benzie Illinois website, to the Community Connections page, there's a great dashboard there that shows all of the referral reasons. You can sort by county, and then all of the pathways that were opened and what were closed successfully or not successfully.
But this is an expansion.
Kind of an expansion of just an added, yeah.
So in some regards, it is new.
Right. I kind of marked both boxes because it kind of is existing, but it's also pieces of it would be new that we'd be doing.
So my question for you is sustainability. I see what your costs are. A lot of it's heavily weighted towards the personnel cost. Talk to me about the second, third, fourth year. How now you've hired for this position. How are you going to sustain that?
So we have real braided funding. So we do have partnerships with a lot of the Medicaid health plans, and they pay us for some of this work. We also serve right now it's universal, so we're serving anyone and we have waiting lists because there's so much need there. So we haven't grown more than we can. There's lots more work out there. So I think we've also had a lot of funding from MDHHS. We had a lot of COVID funding to address SDOH needs, through all of that. So, and we're continuing to pursue these contracts with the managed health plans ongoing. So I think we also serve a lot of uninsured folks that there's not funding and not a funding source for. So all of this is really braided together, and every year it looks a little bit different, but that's why we're coming for funding like this to be able to keep doing what we're doing and have a little more focus on this work, in addition to the other things that we do.
Yeah, I apologize. Maybe I just missed it, but I feel like I didn't really get the answer of how are you sustaining it.
I think we are sustaining it with ongoing contracts, with expanding contracts with the managed health plans, the Medicaid managed health plans, and looking for other funding like this. Any other thoughts, Michelle, on how to?
Here's we've been doing this. But in addition. I. Does.
So your thinking is that it's an expansion, an additional expense, but based on your track record, once you've got it up and running, you'll be able to find other sources of funding for it.
Well. That'll be another. There's a lot of.
And I think the other advantage of this is, like I said, we have waiting lists. So those that we have funding for sources for go to the top of the list, like they're not gonna have to go on waiting lists. So, we're obviously not wanting to grow more than what we can fund. But those that we have payment sources for are the first ones that are going to be able to get, like, connected with a community health worker and get the services they need.
So our role may be. Process.
Yeah, that's the link that I was putting together after listening to the presentations given thus far. And exactly, I was seeing you working together in different facets, and there's certain strengths with each of you for the holistic outcome of it. So, yeah, exactly what you. Mm-hmm.
How do we do that?
Well, ultimately.
Yeah.
And we just started something even if.
Dedicated to that.
Great.
That's a great resource.
And then.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
I'll receive the packet.
One more.
I printed it. What's different from what you probably have presented from Katie is I made bullet points to kind of condense my very wordy proposal down into a few bullet points. And additionally, on the very end, I have attached exhibit E, and I highlighted some of the points that show you where the allowabilities are. Specific to our first responders and our project. So my name is Rebecca Hubers. I am the Emergency Management Coordinator for Benzie County. Excuse me for I usually talk fast, but for some reason I'm nervous today. So I'm just gonna stick to my bullet points. So I'm gonna look down a lot. So our proposal, first of all, why me? There's nothing in there that says, hey, Becky's office wants some money. Is because on the other agencies that are reflected in this project are busy. They're saving lives and doing good things. And not that I don't just sit in the basement and do nothing. But part of my job description is project management, grant and training acquisition, cooperative interdepartmental relationships. That's like the third bullet down on my job description if Jackie hasn't let you know yet. My goal has always been for Benzie County to take my relationships with fire, EMS, 911, sheriff's department, police department, all that, and make sure that Benzie County is safe, that the people of Benzie County are safe, not only from my FEMA/emergency management, Homeland Security perspective, but just how can my office help bring training into the county and do things that help our first responders, help our people. So that's always kind of been my goal. So I tend to outreach quite a bit. So one of the other important things about, and Corey Ellis is with me. He's the the 911 director. Obviously you guys know that, but everybody else may not know that. And he has a big component in this project. And so that's why he's here to answer some of those questions. So the other part of our jobs as department heads is to fiscally use the money that the taxpayers give us to make sure that we're doing the best in our roles and not just wasting the money. So Corey has been working on this emergency dispatch project for a while. He was in front of you earlier to get 2% funding. He has gotten an MMRMA grant. So this project or these opioid funds are another way for us to say, let's use a source of funding for a one-time initiative or something that allows for the taxpayer money that they give us all the time to be used more responsibly for other things that we might have to use, because we always have things we have to do and we're always looking for money. So I think it's our job to find alternate funding opportunities, to be more fiscally responsible with the money that we receive. And most of us are either millage based or general fund based. So obviously I don't have to, these are all pretty much facts in these bullet points, but I don't have to tell you that our first responders deal with almost a daily interaction with opioid or substance abuse disorders and those co-occurring mental health issues. We deal with it on the daily basis. You see it in the news and you see it in our call response logs that we might send you. one of the things I'm a big proponent of is training. And I think education not only opens people to not have a stigma towards one thing or another, but it might even help them reflect on themselves personally. I think that opioid use and substance use disorders impact us all somehow. If they haven't, they will. And not only are they, if we evolve training, would it train them for their duties that they normally do anyway? But would also maybe train them for how they might handle a situation personally down the line and to better reflect on personal education. So training has always been a big proponent of mine. So I'm constantly looking for training options. Training is an allowable funding use in Exhibit E. I highlighted that so we didn't have to question it. And then I gave you the two training sources that we use. So what I'm requesting, I guess, from these guys is to show you some measurability by telling you what classes that were received from the training funds that they used, how many people took those classes, and that they completed the course. The reason that there's maybe more hours for the sheriff's office than there is for central dispatch really has to do with the course catalogs. It's the like you said, if you purchase something like purchase a training module, everybody could use it, but there's maybe less training modules for 911 in regards to personal training or advanced training than there is for like sheriff's office or EMS. I didn't include EMS on this training, not because I didn't want to include them, but they have an extensive amount of training offered to them for no cost. So nothing really applied to them to help them benefit, but I did reach out to EMS in this respect. So I was looking at all of our agencies. So there are some numbers that reflect some training subscriptions that will help specific towards, what the funding is for and how they can measure it and explain it to you how they're going to get it. The third or the last component of this request was for that EMD. And we've talked about it quite a bit. And the reason I even started researching Exhibit E was, one, we put out this request and there wasn't any action on it at all. Like there's nothing. I'm like, well, if no one's going to use that money and we're going to find ways to use that money. It was through outreach that and meetings that everybody started to find it. So I congratulate Katie on getting the word out to make this happen. So EMD, if you've, let me go back to my point so I don't get super nervous. Recently in the media, we've seen a lot of incidences, mostly because I think the media now is doing the whole what's going on with the sheriff's department. They do a record log or something like that. I think they do. I forgot what it's called, but an activity log where they're like, and then the social media outputs about what EMS calls are going on. We had our friend Rory for a while, letting everybody know what was going on. And there was quite a bit of outcry just in the last month that was like, why were there like 4 overdose calls in one day? Oh my gosh, what's going on? Well, I wanted to remind you that all of those calls have to go through central dispatch. EMS goes there and saves the day, either through Narcan administration or other first aid administration. But regardless, somebody was dying, somebody called 911. And so it's important to think about all of those other aspects that happen along the way. And kudos to the after the fact recovery and all of those great things, because we have to keep them working on themselves and stay sober after the fact. But we have a lot of people who do this over and over again, and there's somebody has to save their life first in order for them to fix their problem, see their problem and fix their problem. So again, there was a highlighted portion in Exhibit E specific to 911. And I can't remember exactly how the wording went, but it was pretty much provide a better outcome. I'd have to go back and read it. Corey, do you have it off the top of your head what it was? I'm gonna look at it really quick for just a second. It was like the only reference to 911. And it was very vague because you know the exhibit is very kind of, you could read it a bunch of different ways. Co-responder and or alternative responder models to address opioid use disorder related 911 calls with greater substance use disorder expertise. And I guess I focused on the greater substance use disorder expertise. And I will have Corey explain exactly what EMD does, but it allows them to have that greater expertise that has to do with all types of calls, including the ones that we get 4 or 5 times a day last month that, you know, that again, someone called 911 and said someone is dying and it was probably an overdose related call. Corey, can I have you touch on what exactly a dispatch would do?
So what I brought with me is this giant contraption. So this is what is referred to as priority dispatch or emergency medical dispatching. This is a card set. This is not the direction we're going forward with. We're going forward with software based, but it's all of this. It's all of this information modernized in technology to be a computer based application. And there is a very specific, I can't read upside down. There's a very specific one that talks about overdose, and there's an overdose card. So that when somebody calls 911, we can give them instructions while they're panicking because their friend, family member, whoever it may be, is likely unconscious, maybe not breathing. We can give them instructions on how to use Narcan or naloxone if they have it. It covers the various options that are out there, auto injectors. It covers the nasal spray. It covers all kinds of options that are out there. So we can actually provide immediate remedy to the situation. Now it is short term. But it's better than nothing at the moment. So this protocol doesn't just do that. When somebody calls 911, it also provides us with a priority system for how we dispatch our EMS. So when somebody calls and they have an overdose, suspected overdose, we work through this system, which again is scripted. It's not a manual system, or excuse me, it's a computerized. It's not manual. So it doesn't slow anything down. It would actually speed up to get the right help there faster. So the EMD protocols are not an option unless we are certified in them, which is part of what the EMD program is. So this program is not really new to Benzie County. I would say we've been down this road a couple of times in the past. We haven't kept it up because of the cost that's associated with it. Not cheap. You can see the cost in the proposal. It's a rather expensive, but it's an important one. Right now, when people call 911 for an ambulance, my staff are legally not allowed to use this system. They are not certified and they are not trained in using it. I'll just kind of leave that with that. But that's the reason we're going the direction to invest in this, because it is an enhancement in medical services in Benzie County for everybody that calls 911, and specifically calling out those overdose situations. This card set is not the most up-to-date one. I actually got an updated one in the mail, and they have a new protocol dealing with mental health specific. So this system is also recognizing that when somebody is having a mental health crisis, it may not be appropriate for EMS or specifically a cop with a gun to show up. There's that scientific information that may escalate the situation, may not make it better. So this card set or this protocol set is approved by medical control for our region. So the changes that they make will affect us, and they are approved as medical treatment. I guess that's kind of my statement on that. I think in the proposal, it kind of spells everything out. The dollar amount that's in the bullet point, a little bit different than what's in that spreadsheet, because when we put this together, we didn't know yet that we had got that MMRMA grant. And so I have been trying to apply for everything I can to help us get this end goal, because that major expense is in year one. The ongoing part of it is absolutely 100% budgeted for. And in my opinion, and my budgets I put together, it will continue. It will be sustained. My staff will maintain their certifications, and it will live indefinitely until it's replaced. My opinion on it. That heavy cost is year one.
So that's why we reached out, is mostly the year one cost to implement it, to get it going, is something that wasn't budgeted, isn't normally a thing that would happen, but like it's, if you see that the year 2, year 3, year 4, those all very obtainable. It's just a maintenance like cost. That is up for our proposal. Do you have any questions? Nick?
I do that.
Yeah, Rebecca, I'll ask a couple. Wouldn't the training that you're proposing, wouldn't any of that cover that EMD?
This was specific to, so would for the dispatch center. In some respect, and then the sheriff's department ones, they don't use the EMD system. So that would be more on a, how am I personally going to respond to somebody in crisis? What's the best way to do that? Those course catalogs have those classes. The undersheriff said that he would just assign those classes, those subscriptions to those course catalogs cost the money that you see. So it's just kind of one of those, they could take it. He's saying, take it more seriously and look further, and then take whatever leftover training funds that they might have that they don't have to spend and put them towards good use, because I don't care what kind of training it is, whether it has to do with how you drive a car better or how you deal with people, training is important. So trying to get the maximum use and make them use their money in good direction.
Let me back up with you just a minute.
Yep.
I asked if the training, and I'm focusing just on central dispatch for a
Okay.
moment, okay? The training that you want to get paid for central dispatch, is any of that satisfy this EMD
It could.
training?
Yep, we could delete the one small one for the big one. Yes.
Okay, and I'm having a hard time understanding your request
Okay,
by dollar.
okay.
So if you just focus on the aggregate cost for the sheriff,
Mhm.
the aggregate cost for a central dispatch, or those training modules.
Yep.
Could you tell me what those costs are?
Yes, in the bullet points, the fiscal year or the annual cost for the training for the sheriff's department, 3,360. Central dispatch for that same kind of process where they go in and they learn more about substance use disorder, associated mental health issues, and opioid use disorder. Their subscription, because it's a little bit, they have less people, was only $621.
Okay, why couldn't the sheriff's office be using Virtual Academy? Since it's a significant difference in cost per person.
You'd have to talk to the sheriff. I think the course catalog is larger and more specific to their everyday uses. That's why they use Lexipol. That I believe their jail used to use Virtual Academy, but they get a bigger option.
Okay,
That's why they have more training opportunities.
so then those two training certificates, about $4,000 per
Okay.
year.
Yep.
Right? And I'm sure there must be some ongoing training. But your total request is between 36,000 and 55.
Yep. So that's the rest of that is EMD.
Okay,
And if you look at in the original proposal, and it is in mine as well, in my little packet, Corey had EMD break down your, it's this sheet right here, or
What does EMD stand for? Okay, that's what I thought. That was too simple.
yes, emergency
So
medical.
EMD is two things. It's a concept on a bigger scale, but it's also in this specific conversation, it's a service, it's a solution. Also, they named trainers really because they created the concept. So that's what they named.
There's a concept out there, but there's a concept out there that can benefit employees, the people who come in first contact with these situations, which ultimately benefits the people who are calling, who are in crises. But you can't have the training unless you pay $50,000. Am I missing something?
That's kind of the proprietary flow of it, yes.
Huh.
And We don't have a choice because the medical control authority, the doctor that is in charge of the medical services in this community, says that that's what we will use.
Med control controls that.
Any of the other solutions for emergency medical dispatching, all of them that are accepted as an industry for 911 require a doctor's sign off for every protocol. Our doctor for medical control, Dr. Smith, will not sign off on anything except this one. Without getting
Because
too into
this is, if you think about it, this is a dispatcher saying, I open the package, you called me, open the package of Narcan and it, and squeeze it into their nose. They're giving medical instruction. That's why the doctor has to sign off. It also says, open your EpiPen, stick it in your leg and push it down, where they're giving them medical dispatch. And that's why
And you
there's,
can't do that right now without this training.
no, they're not doctors. They couldn't, they're getting the oversight. So, you can't just as a good Samaritan say, hi, you could say something like, do you use an EpiPen? Use your EpiPen, where they didn't give medical advice. They just said, hey, you're panicking, grab your EpiPen, you're forgetting, to do those things. That's kind of what they do now. And this is actually, the computer scripts it for them and says, administer your EpiPen, put it in your leg and press the button, actually giving medical advice. So that's why it has an oversight.
What percentage of the people who call in you think actually have an EpiPen or Narcan?
Oh, you'd probably be surprised at how many people have Narcan.
Really?
Yes.
I can tell you in my experience when I actually took the phone call, in the various places I've worked, I have administered, I would say probably over 3 dozen of those both combined, help people administer them. So you would be surprised, especially with the trend that we see going forward with Narcan and as starting to incorporate in our communities of cabinet and grab some Narcan, or if you're identified as susceptible to it when you maybe exit jail or you exit treatment, so it's out in the community a lot more than it used to be. And so the help to administer that is also going up.
Let me ask this part. I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
You hire a dispatcher who comes from a different area who did have the EMD training. He's not allowed, he or she is not allowed to administer it here because we've not purchased it as a county.
Correct. That is exactly me. I'm certified in it already. I have been since I started in 911 12 years ago. I've never let it lapse. I can't use it. Because we don't have, it's not just, so this isn't just a software. This comes with the policies, with the legal work through, with the education, the training, all of it. This is a turnkey solution to be able to use it. It's not just a piece of software. That's the really basic version of it.
And it is disgustingly proprietary. We can't do anything about it. We argue about it all the time and just grunt and groan about it, that there's gotta be other options. It shouldn't always be this way, and we can't do anything.
I will say I guess I would say the one nice thing about having one approved in our region is that same everywhere.
Yeah, so there's not Leelanau doesn't do it any different than Benzie would do it because the doctor says the same.
And
So
actually,
I'm sure that's probably why that's that.
Rebecca
I
brings
think
up
I
a good
interrupted
point
you,
also,
Art. Do you
that
have
other
another comment?
counties use this already.
We're
Right.
one of the few that don't use this, and it was mostly because of, it costs a lot of money.
A follow-up question, this is not to be combative, okay? But you said that when you were answering the phones, you had about 3 dozen people that you encountered. Out of how many calls?
That I couldn't tell you.
But I mean
Wow.
hundreds of calls,
More than
thousands of
hundreds.
calls.
And I don't answer the phone very often when I was a director, but I easily took, I would say 2. I actually had a mom say, I have Narcan, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
And I had to explain to her how to. And that's based on how my ratio of hours is like just 1 or 2, and I can't even tell you. I don't have as many hours as Corey, but I mean, it happens, and just in our news releases lately, one time it happened 4 times in one day.
Yeah.
So. Over multiple shifts. So it depends on the day, depends on the people, depends on the circumstance. Not everybody has that much of a reaction to the drugs that they're taking. They're just. For overdose. We have several overdoses that people don't find until later will die.
Just
Because
as
the
a
families
side,
aren't receptive.
just as a side note, by the way, because you provided us with your resume, great resume, and it convinced me even further we're lucky to have you.
That's embarrassing. I don't like talking about myself, but it was a component, was it not, of the RFP that the project manager gives you a brief summary, and I'm like, so here I gotta talk about myself.
I'm
So
expecting,
there you go.
I'm expecting a compensation increase to follow.
Yeah.
Well, you just started that, didn't you?
It's been on TV too, if you really wanna look for
My son loves that.
it. Yes, Gary.
If I'm not mistaken, the health department has Narcan sitting right there, correct? So would you teach people how to use it?
I mean, we can, but.
This is totally confusing to me. Come on. Exactly.
But what? Reality is.
Mm-hmm.
They forget they.
But
Well,
if
and
you-
if they're the person overdosing and their family member walks in and goes, I know he has that, here's the box, I don't know how to use it, because I didn't open it up and read the instructions, if you've ever read the instructions on any of your medications. They're extremely long, or sat through the video or anything like that, so they call 911. And then we go, hi, are they breathing? Turn them over, tell me if they're breathing. Do you think that they overdosed? I think they did. Do you have Narcan? Yes, he's got some. Stick it up their nose. Push the, that type of thing. It's worked.
Just seems ridiculous to me that we publicly give this stuff out. But we gotta pay $60,000 to this firm to administer it when anybody off the street can get it and administer it. I'm sorry, it's beyond my.
Well, it has to do with the fact that these people are professionals giving medical advice. You can. Don't do it on yourself. Yeah, you can do it on yourself. You're not gonna sue yourself or your mom for doing it wrong.
Just seems
But you would sue
redundantly
dispatch if
stupid.
somebody told you to
be
do it
honest with
wrong
you.
or not do it at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just
That's
kind of
not
a
gonna
follow-up to
change
what
my mind.
Gary was talking about. What I'm trying to reconcile is that if I have that in my possession, either one of those two solutions, but I don't already know how to use it,
Unless you're the person that's having the overdose.
okay.
Maybe you're hanging out with your friends and you're has too much. They know you have it. I would assume most people know how to do it. It's not just about the Narcan, it's about that. Call 911. Now what? Now what? Now what? It's not just like, hey, give them Narcan. Cool. Bye. We don't hang up. And there's more to it than that. That's just kind of a brief version to, give a strong understanding.
And I understand under stress, what I know, I may just be out the window,
People
so.
have CPR training too, but they forget how to use it and when someone's collapsed in front of them, it's very important.
Sure.
So, and that's just it. Now you've given them Narcan, nothing happened. Now what? We go into the other steps. So there's more to it than that.
And one last thing, did I hear you say that surrounding counties already have this tool available to them?
I think all of our surrounding counties within the SMED control have it. Benzie County is probably the last. I'm not sure about Antrim, but it has to do with. This card's
been around for a while also.
Yeah.
I
I took this course when I started, whoever my resume says, over 20 years ago. I started EMT. I was EMT certified when I started out as a dispatcher. at Central Dispatch in
96.
1996.
No, eight.
But you still can't tell anybody how to use it working for the county.
You can, but again,
I was
it's
referring to you.
its own protocols, its own liabilities, its own, you shall do this, you shall do that, you shall do this in order to maintain that
I don't think
liability
that's stupid.
and whatever, just like Taser does when they say you have to use this, but you have to use our training to do it right. Not get us sued, along with you sued, things like that. So there's just a lot of extra components on it like that. I will say that Corey has done his due diligence and the original number on this obviously has dropped because he's got an MMRMA grant and he's working on a 2% grant. And so again, this is one of those things where by seeking alternate sources of funding, he's able to then continue to operate his 911 center without a deficiency because of this mandatory type training. And this was, the EMD was already approved. It's just a matter of us doing our due diligence to not use all of his funds on one protocol when he can use it for,
So the number we have is correct, or it needs to be adjusted?
it'll be lower.
It'll be lower.
I can-
Do we know by
I can
how
give you-
much?
So as of right now, there will be two numbers that change. If you go to the very bottom of this page.
Yep.
The grand total amount is $10,000 less. That accounts for the MMRMA grant for 10,000, and the year one amount, $10,000 less. That's the only funding that we know for sure, grant funding that we know for sure we have received. Everything beyond year one will be the same at this point.
So $20,000 less or $10,000?
10,000.
10,000. Yep.
Okay, so the
The grand
51,253,
It's 41.
Could be 41,253.
okay, in the
That's for all five.
32,093,
Will be 30.
Will be
22.
22,093.
yeah, okay.
Are you asking for the grand total or just the implementation here?
I think he's
Implementation.
asking for we're asking for
The
the
ask is for-
implementation amount. Not the every year there'll be,
The maintenance,
that's already gonna be budgeted.
Will be 22, Rhonda.
22,093.
And plus the additional for the training, and if Art, you wanted to take out the virtual academy because you thought it was redundant, that'd be fine. The sheriff's office training is completely separate.
I wasn't,
It'll be the 22,000 plus the 4,000.
Yeah, the 33.
Mhm.
I'm not suggesting what you should or shouldn't do. It just caught my attention that there was disparity between the two costs, that's all.
Yeah, it's just who they have as their subscriber and what is accessible to them.
And again,
It
I'm not,
already exists.
and I'm not sure, I'm not here to tell the sheriff how to run his office at all. But it seems to me if I was in his shoes, I'd be looking at a different provider if you can get the same thing for less money.
Yeah,
Lexipol really is the,
that is. the top
elite
line. They're
standard,
actually getting
and
some
we've
pretty good stuff.
went to Lexipol on purpose because they really are elite in a lot of ways.
They offer a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Okay,
EMS, various other departments can use Lexipol as well.
Other questions?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
thank you.
That was a lot of information.
Now you all know my numbers.
So I would ask, because it was a lot of information, I would ask that everyone do the scoring sheet and send them to me. And then
Send them to
I
you.
can do I can compile everything and do like an average and then give you the scores to make a final decision at your next meeting if you'd like.
So we're gonna use one sheet for all four
Yep,
requests.
so it actually has 4 columns. It has vendor 1, 2, 3, 4, and so I just scribbled through mine.
And vendor, and is the vendor identified in the way it was presented? Because the number 1 became number 4.
Yes, so I did it on the way it was presented. So Central Wellness was 1, then Rodasi, then the health department, then staff.
All right, and we can send that to you.
So yep, I would go ahead and go through it and then send it all to me. And then what I'll do is I'll put it all together and do an average and we'll have it on the next board packet, which is November 28.
So it's unfortunate that we had 3 board members not here for this presentation.
Mm-hmm.
How do we, I don't want to ignore their input. How do we get them up to speed?
So I'm going to reach out to them and recommend that they watch this meeting on YouTube. That is the glory of us streaming, is that it's all on YouTube and they can watch the meeting
Okay,
and they would be able to do the scoring on their own then.
great.
Mhm.
Are you satisfied with that?
Yes, I'd like
Okay,
that.
I will open the final public comment.
Hello, everybody. State Representative John Roth. Just going to give you a few things that have happened over the last little bit. Today, we did go sine die. That means without day. It's the last day of session. So we are done for the year. Not my desire, but that's what has happened. Wanted to give you a little bit, be very clear on the wind and solar siting. You do not have local control unless you vote yes. And you cannot change. You can vote yes, but don't do it any stricter than state options or whatever rules they do through the PSC. So any misnomer about having local control is really half the answer. Elections are still trying to figure that out a little bit. We looks like at reading a lot of stuff while we're talking today, and looks like there'll be a February primary, February 27th, no March date. We'll see. And then probably a May special election for the two representatives that won their mayor seat. So it looks like we will have nothing but 54 in the House through May, that early May date. Well, I think that gives us great opportunity to do some really good bipartisan work, and I'm very hopeful that will happen. We'll see what the leadership decides to do. We did pass financial disclosure, and I did want to talk a little bit about that because that was confusing at the end. Each state rep or senator or secretary of state, attorney general, or governor has to file a financial disclosure by April 15th of each year. In that, you will have to disclose any income and liabilities that you have as a candidate. Your spouse will have to be included, but only their employer and what they do. No dollar figure for that. If you have any ties to the states and contracts of any kind, you have to disclose that, or any of your immediate family that have contracts with the state will have to be disclosed. So your brother, sister is a lobbyist, your wife is a lobbyist, your one of your kids are a lobbyist, and they deal anything with the state, that does have to be disclosed. One thing that we did manage to get changed and made sure it passed was a funding mechanism for our local police department to get some money. Problem that we had with the first iteration of the bill was that you have to have a violent area to get the money. So if you're not a violent area, you're not getting the money. The other one was that anybody over any county over 90,000 people, which is just Grand Traverse County in our area, obviously, wouldn't have that option to get the money either. So we got rid of all those, and our local police departments now have an option to get some money, which they can also have some flexibility how they use it. If you don't have a violent area, obviously you're not going to work on violent protection issues. You're going to be working on, maybe you need new radios for your department or something else. There's going to be flexibility there. I will talk to Sheriff Rosa when I get a little more clarification on those bills to see what possibility he could use those for if need be, or your townships that also work with the sheriff's department. So if it's a police officer dedicated to a certain township, that township may also be able to get some funds. So we'll work on that. Just saw that Eagle came out with, maybe you guys already know some of this, is Eagle just announced $10 million worth of funding. The village of Beulah got $2 million for their wastewater treatment center here. So nice to see a little money coming north. Narcan, there's some good possibilities with Narcan coming. Narcan is actually one of the worst or weakest drugs out there to deal with opiate situations. There are two other companies that would love to work with Michigan. Right now, DHHS won't do a contract with them. There's a drug that has got an 8-hour working period instead of some of the Narcan that's just 4. And the state has been resistant to work with them, but they're getting a lot of push from legislators to start looking at that. These would be a lot more effective drugs that would help with overdose situations. So hopefully that will happen. We'll see. Hopefully we'll do something at the first of the year and start working on some of these projects. Now, actually, we cannot go back legally until January 11th. That's the second Wednesday of the month of January. That is the official opening day of session. So we will go back and start doing some things, and hopefully we can see some more good progress up north. So happy to answer any questions if you have it. Feel free.
Well, you struck on it on the two gentlemen that got, or people that got elected as mayor.
Yes, sir.
Which changed the dynamics of the state reps. Will they be sworn in immediately after that May election?
Usually it's after the certification, so about a week after.
About
that.
a week later?
Yeah, whenever the certification occurs. they
That
will
does
be
give
sworn.
us about 4 months.
Mhm. I hope very much so.
Well, it
I do
depends on
have
what-
that desire to get some stuff done, and there's a lot of bills that are passing that may have a majority sponsorship on it, but they were actually Republican bills last term. So there are things that go through bipartisanly. Not as many as I'd like to see, but certainly are some.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a couple questions? I know you want to get out of here, but
gotta get my
I'll try to be brief.
Yes, good.
So now that there's an equal number, what happens with the speaker?
Because it is not 55-55, the speaker stays the same.
Okay,
Because it's 54-54 didn't change that. It's not truly equal representation. So committee chairs stay the same, the speaker stays the same. But
second,
that vote total
Very
is a
good.
whole different game now.
understood.
Yeah.
Second question, when you're talking about windmills and solar panels, what I learned from that bill was that the state law only applied 100 megawatts or whatever the expression is,
Megahertz, yeah.
and bigger.
Megawatts, sorry. Yes,
Okay, so that we have like the solar farm up near Traverse City, that's less than that.
Yep.
So there will be local control if it's less than 100.
that's correct. Yeah,
Okay, I
Commissioner,
think
you're
that's
right.
important
Yeah, that's
because we're not gonna get the big farms. All right, well, it sounds like the sky's falling and I was very unhappy to find out that the local control was taken away until I took a deeper dive and realized, well, there actually is the caveat. I think it's important,
Yeah,
Representative Roth, that you mentioned that.
there is a problem with that though, too, Commissioner, or that
Let's just say, Art.
that's considered community solar. Community solar is not part of this project at all. So this does not have the same siting things, but it also, there are some restrictions of whether or not you can do it. So the one in Traverse City was actually a private investment. People did it on their own. They wanted to have this site, and Cherryland Electric was willing to let them go into their grid. The true community solar is a little different in that the restrictions at the state don't allow it right now. There's a bill trying to go through. It was not part of this package at all. So it's being handled quite different. Grand Rapids wants to do a community solar project. They're being denied at this point. So it could possibly open up. Yes, sir. You are correct. But at this point, there are some restrictions on that.
And my last comment or ask is, you're familiar with what some of your peers are doing with the kinship programs?
Yes, there's some work being done. There always seems to be work done. It's getting it to the end is the most important thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Joe.
Anybody else? Public comment? Hearing none, I'll close public comment and I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.